Introduction. All over the world, each and every day, there are thousands of people generating millions of dollars in revenue through the Internet. The way that each individual is doing so varies enormously, as there is a huge multitude of different ways of making money online. Even so, it is still a fact that there are millions of dollars being made online on a daily basis. And the best part is, this is a business world that is open to anyone and everyone, and whether they have a college degree or whether they have dropped out of high school, it doesn't matter. Furthermore, previous business experience is not required, nor is a truckload of startup cash, because no matter who or what you are, you can get started today. Of course, if you are just considering whether you should attempt to grab your share of this online goldmine or not, one of the first considerations has to be how you can do so. What is the best way of making money online, in other words? In other words, even if you have tried to generate cash from the net already in various different ways, or perhaps in just one way up to now, you may well ask exactly the same question. It's all very well and good talking about making money from the net, but how do you do it? More accurately, how do you make good money without going to college to get a degree in software or graphic design or something like that? This book is going to address this question by introducing you to a way of making money online that is far less well known than many other money-making ideas. I am going to highlight why the relatively hidden nature of this business is actually a strong point rather than a weakness. You will also learn why, if you can master the basic skills, and trust me, the required skills are very basic, this business can generate a very handsome online income for anyone who masters it. What I am talking about here is a craft or an art known as copywriting, which can be incredibly lucrative, as you are just about to discover. And by the end of this book, you will have everything you need to know to get your own copywriting career off the ground, so you can literally hit the ground running. When you run, you always get to your destination more quickly than you do if you walk, or more likely, stumble towards that target. So if you want to grab your share of the copywriting millions, this is where the journey begins. However, before beginning, there is one point that bears mentioning. Whilst the primary focus of this book is on how you start a business where you get paid to write sales copy for other people, you can also use this information to create highly effective sales pages for your own products or services too, as exactly the same principles and ideas apply to the research and writing skills that you apply to writing your own copy or writing copy for a customer. Applying what you read in this manual to your own sales page will be every bit as effective as it would be if you were selling your copywriting services. What is copywriting? It's as old as business itself. If you are interested in the idea of making money from copywriting, the first question you probably have is, what exactly is it? The answer to this one is dead simple. Copywriting is the art of writing copy, or more specifically, the art of writing successful advertising copy. This is basically all there is to copywriting, creating advertising materials. Now, as you are no doubt already aware, advertising was not something that was invented when the net came along in the way that net-focused activities like website design were. On the contrary, advertising is a feature of everyday business that has been around almost since the very first day someone decided to trade a product or service for whatever represented currency at the time. As soon as someone started selling, advertising was born, and it hasn't changed a great deal in centuries. Every time you turn on the TV nowadays, you are bombarded with adverts every few minutes, and behind every one of those adverts, there are copywriters earning their keep by applying their creative skills to producing that hard-hitting advertising copy. If you open a newspaper or a magazine, the story is exactly the same, And no matter where you find yourself on the net nowadays, you are almost certainly going to see advertising materials on pretty much every website you visit. The idea of copywriting is therefore not a new one, nor is it something that is restricted to the net. On top of this, many of the tried and tested advertising principles and theories that have been passed down over the decades are still just as effective today as they were 100 years ago. The classic ads from those days still work with a bit of modernizing, every bit as well now as they did back then. As an example of both of these factors, take a look at the Ad Classics website, where there are in excess of 1,000 classic ads dating back to the dawning days of the 1900s. Open up any category of advert on the site, and you will see that there are dozens of individual adverts. If you open any of these ads up, you might be shocked to see that ad copy that was effective back then is not all that different to the advertising that you see nowadays on TV, in magazines, at the movie theater, and on the net. Look right there on the top corner of the ad listing page, and you have the ubiquitous Google advertising materials. It's the same at the top of every page on the site, proving what I suggested earlier. It doesn't matter what kind of website you visit, you will be hit with advertising. Now, as someone who is shortly to start generating an income from copywriting by creating advertising materials, you should immediately realize that this is a very good thing. The more widely advertising spreads, the more demand there is for people who can create effective advertising materials, which is where you are going to enter the story very shortly. I would highly recommend that you add this site to your bookmark or favorites folder, because once you become a copywriter, there will be times when you need inspiration or new ideas. This site is a goldmine for uncovering old advertising copy, which obviously worked, because otherwise it wouldn't be a classic. Consequently, this is an immensely rich source of advertising ideas, a ton of information available for free, so make sure that you keep the URL handy. Classic advertising books, like the timeless Scientific Advertising, should not be ignored either, even though they are nearly 100 years old. This particular book by Claude Hopkins was originally published in 1923. The advertising principles that were analyzed and recommended back then are every bit as appropriate today as they were almost a century ago, as the basic principles of advertising that were discussed in the book still apply. Consequently, to master the basics of advertising, the two resources highlighted above provide everything you need to learn both the theory and the practicalities of creating effective, profitable advertising materials, even if you have absolutely no experience of doing so previously. What is the net copywriting angle? As suggested, the ability to write successful advertising copy is not something that is new, nor is it something that is restricted to the net. There is, however, a specific copywriting angle that is very specific to the net, which is the ability to write successful sales pages for online products or services. Learning how to create sales pages of this nature for profit is the focal point of this book. If you have been surfing around the net for more than 5 minutes, the chances are that you are already very familiar with sales pages for products that are on sale on the net. If, however, you have little idea of what I'm referring to here, you can find thousands of product sales pages by visiting an affiliate network site like clickbank.com. Open up any category on the site by clicking a popular category name on the marketplace page, such as money and employment. This generates a list of products index under this particular category. As there are over 10,000 products available through ClickBank, there is never any shortage of sales pages. So if you need to clarify exactly what kind of page we are going to focus on, take a quick look. Although you should be careful not to waste too much time with ClickBank at this stage, it is an easy place to waste precious hours idly browsing around. There is one thing you would notice if you looked at more than a handful of sales pages. Study enough pages and you will begin to sense that the quality of the sales materials varies enormously from those that feature top quality professional level sales copy to stuff that has obviously been produced by someone who has absolutely no idea about advertising and online promotion. If you are anything like me, this raises a very important question. Why would anyone who has a product or service to sell online be interested in employing someone else to write their sales copy for them? Here is the perfect answer in a real example that happened a few years ago. At the time, a very well-known online marketer was about to launch a brand new product which he knew would be a real killer. The guy behind the product had already made millions through his online marketing activities, but he nevertheless recognized that his strength was, and still is, selling and marketing, whilst there were other people capable of writing more powerful sales copy. He also recognized an essential truth of online marketing, which is the fact that if a particular job or task does not play to your strengths, it is almost always better to get someone else who is an expert to do that job for you. By getting an expert involved, you usually save yourself an inordinate amount of research and background work, as well as a huge amount of time. Moreover, the finished product is always going to be better than you could have made, and you can use the time that you have saved to focus on your strengths to make 5, 10, or 100 times the cash that you kept in your pocket by doing the job yourself. Consequently, he paid a highly respected online copywriter a reputed $25,000 to write just one sales page. It could have been more or less, but it was certainly a 5-figure sum for only one page of advertising copy, a few thousand words at the outside. And guess what happened? Due in no small part to the power and effectiveness of the advertising copy, the product was the first digital information product to gross over 1 million in sales in one day. So, would you say that the initial 5-figure investment was worth it or not? The question doesn't really merit asking in truth. Of course it was worth it, because without that copy, superbly crafted advertising that sold the product fantastically well, it is certainly possible that the gross income on the first day would have been an awful lot lower. If you were to compare this situation with the vast majority of clickbank marketers who do everything, including writing the sales copy themselves, you would undoubtedly see a very different picture emerging. As the majority of these people have no experience or background in copywriting or advertising, they generally do a very poor job with their sales copy. And the worst thing is, they don't even recognize the problem, or even that it exists, because they do not have any guidance or copywriting advice available. This prompts a question and highlights an opportunity. To deal with the question first, how difficult is it to write good advertising copy? The answer is not all that difficult, because the resources you need to create highly effective ad copy are easily available on the net. You have already been introduced to 2 such resources in the previous chapter. It requires nothing more than learning what works before applying it. The opportunity is, of course, represented by the fact that while some less business-minded online marketers attempt to create their own sales copy, most of the smart guys, for example, the people who have the money to pay for it, are more than happy to pay high-quality copywriters thousands of dollars to create their sales page advertising copy for them. This is obviously your curtain call. So let's begin by considering what you need to do before getting started. Before you get started, fame and fortune, one is far more important than the other. As perhaps suggested in the previous chapter, there are a handful of online copywriters who are very well known, like the 5-figure copywriter who was mentioned. People like him can and do command massive fees, and in contrast to what is happening financially elsewhere in the real world, their fees only ever go up as demand increases incessantly. I will introduce you to a few of the acknowledged copywriting greats later, because they do have an integral part to play in this copywriting plan. However, the thing to understand is that for every well-known copywriter, there are hundreds of unknowns. And while some of these people are undoubtedly struggling, there are also a significant number who are nevertheless making a very handsome living from their copywriting activities. So joining this group should be your first target. For example, I recently saw an ad from a copywriter who I did not know who is offering to create a sales page for $7,500, discounted from his normal price of $10,000 per page. The ad itself was very persuasive, and there were plenty of testimonials on the page as evidence that this individual was good at his job. So, if I had been in the market for a copywriter, this would have been a very interesting offer. But what you should take from this is that you do not need to be a famous copywriter to make good money from this business. After all, if you charged only $5,000 for each page you write, which would definitely be a bottom-end fee for an experienced writer, and you picked up one commission every week, then you're looking at a business that will pull in just short of $250,000 a year, working from home. But I can't write. I guess that if one thing should be clear from what you have read so far, it is the fact that as the vast majority of sales pages are still heavily text-based, as opposed to sales pages where video is used to get the sales message across, you need to be able to write if you are to create sales pages like those that you should now be familiar with. Now, I know from years of experience dealing with online marketers of all levels of skill, ability, and business backgrounds that some people appear to be great natural writers, whereas others seem far less naturally inclined. Seeing people to whom writing seems to come naturally can be depressing, and I have seen many people entirely dispirited because of it. For example, I have met or heard of many would-be online entrepreneurs who never got out of the starting blocks because they allowed the fact that they had never written anything more complicated than email to derail their business before it even got steady on the tracks. But here is a very important factor to take on board, which might be the key to whether you succeed or fail as a copywriter. Very, very few people in online business, or indeed in any other walk of life, are naturally talented writers. As proof, many of the top copywriters in the business freely admit that rather than being naturally skilled writers and admin, what they were and are ordinary people who were willing to learn their craft and then practice so that they became just a little better with every passing day. It is completely unnecessary to be naturally gifted if you want to become a high-quality copywriter, because everything that you need can be learned. Indeed, trying to do things in any other way would be foolish and self-defeating, because if others have already done all of the hard work for you, and they have, why waste your time repeating what has already been done, reinventing the wheel, as this is commonly described? Maybe you can't write advertising copy at this moment, but by the time you have finished reading this book and have used the resources provided here, you will have everything you need to start creating top-drawer online advertising materials at your fingertips. Whether you think you can write or not is therefore entirely irrelevant as far as copywriting is concerned, because nothing is genuinely new in the world, and when the old stuff works, you should use it. As all successful businesses have done since commerce was first invented, you need to do nothing more than learn from others before improving on what they are doing to land the success and the fees that you are striving for. Why effective research is the key. The importance of knowing your perfect prospect. Earlier, you were introduced to a couple of old-style advertising resources that highlighted both the theory and the practicalities of advertising offline in the past. What we are now going to do is move this on a stage by looking at resources that are more focused on online advertising before demonstrating how you use your research results to create highly effective sales copy. To do this, I'm going to imagine that as your first assignment or commission, you've been asked to write a sales page for a digital information product focused on the presently booming acai berry weight loss market. This happens to be a product that someone else has created in this hypothetical case, but the principles of research and writing would be exactly the same as if it was your own product. Having an example to use when demonstrating how to research your market properly is extremely important, because when you create sales copy, you always do so with a very specific project and objective at the forefront of your mind. When you write sales copy, your sales page must be designed to appeal or talk to the kind of people who are most likely to buy the product for which you are writing the copy. To take this one stage further still, many professional copywriters recommend that you should research your market until you have a very clear idea of exactly who the person is that is most likely to buy the product. Once you have done so, you then produce your own identikit picture of the ideal individual customer for that product. By having a clear picture of your ideal prospect, it becomes much easier to write effective copy with this single individual firmly fixed in your mind's eye, rather than trying to write in a way that appeals to the faceless, amorphous mass that is the market. Isolating one individual, perfect prospect usually works incredibly well, because, as when you are speaking to another person face to face, it is always easier to make what you're saying a perfect match for the needs of the individual than it is to say something that is 100% matched to the requirements of a large group of individuals. This is something that I always do, and when I have my perfect prospect in mind, I raise it another notch by searching for and printing out an image of someone who looks very close to being the person I have pictured in my mind. I then stick this as close to my monitor as possible, so that every time I sit down to work on the copy, I never forget this person at whom every word I write will be aimed. So, the first research step is to establish exactly what kind of person makes up the target market for the product for which you are writing the copy. The exact information that you need to create your perfect identikit picture will vary from case to case and situation to situation. But the following are some of the more obvious factors that you should consider when establishing who your individual perfect prospect is: age, gender, family situation, income, location, and any other interests. You also need to establish whether there is any money being spent in the market that you are writing copy for. Even though this is the kind of research that the product creator should have done well before deciding whether it was worth making the product or not, it helps you to establish how hard your copy is going to have to work to generate sales. Although in the early days it is unlikely that you are going to be in a position to do this, after you have established yourself as a recognized copywriting expert, there may be situations where you turn down a commission because your research indicates that there is no market for the product in question. You might do this based on research into whether there is any money in the market. In my experience, it is far more profitable in the long run to be selective about the work you do than it is to accept everything that comes across your table, especially if instead of accepting a flat fee for your work, you are being paid based on results, which is something I will return to later. By the time you are in a position to be selective, you will also have a reputation to protect. So sometimes accepting an assignment for a product that is going to be very difficult to sell is not going to help your business in the long run. In the long term. Consequently, having the capacity to research whether there is money being spent in the market is vitally important. There is one other factor that you need to consider as well, an intangible that nevertheless has the capacity to dictate whether your sales copy is extremely successful or far less so. This is the fact that no matter what market or niche you are working in, the people who populate that market will have a common language, a jargon or argot that is only known and used by insiders. In my experience, Less knowledgeable marketers who are attempting to get into a new niche for the first time commonly make the mistake of not understanding or appreciating that in every market sector or niche there is a specific form of language that differentiates those who are in the know from outsiders. Because they do not understand this, they market using outsider language, in other words, ordinary everyday English, and their sales results are poor or non-existent as a direct result. Remember your perfect prospect? Well, he or she is undoubtedly an insider who uses the special jargon that only insiders know. It therefore follows that if you really want to get your sales message through to this prospect in the most powerful and effective way, you have to learn the insider way of speaking to do so. As a simple demonstration of how all-pervasive niche jargon is, you would probably think that if you are going to buy seeds to plant in your garden, understanding the information on the label would be child's play. If so, this Seed Packet Jargon Buster page will probably help change your mind. Seed Packets Explained. Bewildered by the jargon on the back of seed packets? Here's a list of what the words and expressions mean. Seeds are sown, plants are planted. Transplants and seedlings are small, young plants. Germinate equals when the seed starts to grow and develop a root and a stem. Under glass, a cover of some kind to protect the seeds or plants from inclement weather. Examples: bottle cloches, cold frames, and greenhouses. In heat, a heated area for growing in. It helps seeds germinate, most often needed for crops, such as tomatoes, that originate in warm countries. Drill, shallow Y-shaped trench, to sow the seed in. Often the depth is given, such as a drill 1.5 centimeters deep. Use the corner of a rake or the tip of a trowel. Flat-bottom drill, shallow trench, but fat or U-shaped, not Y-shaped, often used for sowing peas in. This is just one niche market example, but every niche or market sector is the same. Hence, it is simple. You have to learn the language. Your essential research portfolio. To start putting together your identikit perfect prospect, the first thing you need to establish are factors like age, gender, and so on. The first step towards building up this picture is to find other websites in the market in which you have been commissioned to write sales copy. In my example, the acai berry market. To find these sites, run a standard Google search using your main search term to locate other associated sites. What you're trying to do is build a short list of half a dozen sites that are specifically focused on the market for which you are thinking of writing copy. Consequently, results that represent individual pages of a site like Wikipedia or Amazon.com are no use to you. It is only the subject-specific sites as highlighted in the previous screenshot that you can meaningfully research. However, checking out some of the related searches at the bottom of the page can sometimes help to find additional sites if you cannot locate half a dozen suitable sites on the first couple of results pages. What you do next is head over to quantcast.com to study the demographics of the audience who use each of these sites. Sites. Investigating at least a handful, as the demographics for each individual site will be slightly different. Thus, by investigating more than one site, you build up a more accurate composite picture of the market for this type of product than you will if you research just one site alone. Quantcast is a site where there is a huge amount of information available about the audience for millions of websites. Although not every site on the net has been quantified, you will sometimes find that the information is an estimate rather than an accurate quantified result. Nevertheless, even these estimates have value as they help to compile your composite market picture. To continue with the previous example, we'll start with the acaiberrysite.com. According to Quantcast, The site currently sees approximately 27,000 visitors a month, down from a peak of nearly 47,000 in early March 2009. This declining traffic would suggest that this particular type of product may be getting less popular than it once was. Although this is not directly relevant to the job you are doing, it nevertheless helps you to build up a more accurate picture of the market in which you are being asked to work, so it does have value. Beneath the chart, there is a detailed breakdown of the demographics of U.S. site visitors for this particular acai berry site. For this, you can clearly begin to see the value of using Quantcast in your research. For example, while you might imagine that the majority of potential prospects for a product of this type would be female, the demographics of this site suggest that there are slightly more male users than females. You can see that nearly 70% of site visitors are aged between 18 and 49, and that almost the same percentage are childless. But there is still more information to be found on the page, as on the right-hand side, there is a list of other websites that people who visit this one are likely to go to, together with an affinity rating which indicates how much more likely they are to visit these sites than an average net user. You can see that there are a few more acai berry sites that you can add to your list. For example, sites that are in exactly the same market. However, there are sites in the list that have nothing to do with acai berries or dieting, with several money and debt-related sites shown as an example. This is incredibly powerful information because it enables you to learn a great deal more about your targeted prospect, firstly from this list itself, and secondly by visiting the sites in question to learn more. For instance, the fact that the people who use this particular weight loss site also visit debt-related resources suggests that they might have money problems, a suggestion that is at least partially confirmed by the earning figures shown in the demographic chart seen earlier. If the sales copy you are writing is for a more expensive product, this information would be extremely relevant as it gives you some indication of how you need to target your copy if it is to be successful. For example, for a significant proportion of your potential prospects, money is likely to be an issue, and therefore you will have to focus on value for money. Yes, it costs this much, but just look at how much you get for the price when you write the sales page. Now, go back to your original Google search. Copy the URL of another site in this market and do the same again. This, for example, is what Quantcast has for acaiberryreports.net. Now you can see that there are far more women using this site than the previous one, which might suggest that their advertising is more targeted for women or that the sales page is more female-orientated. Whatever the reason, the main point is that this adds a bit more detail to the composite, perfect prospect picture that you are building up. To find out where the target audience lives, open Alexa.com, paste in the site URL that you are investigating, click the Go button, and finally scroll a little way down the page to find the geographical makeup of the site audience. The audience for acaiberrysite.net is overwhelmingly US-based, as would be expected, with the next largest single country prospect base being India. With lots of highly appropriate demographic information collected, the next step is to establish whether there is any money being spent in this market, because when money is being spent, there is also money to be made. This is a very simple step, as all you need to do is go back to your original Google search results page. A quick look at the page indicates that there is the maximum allowable number of 3 adverts at the top left corner of the results page, with another maximum 8 on the right-hand side. This immediately indicates that this is a market where there is plenty of money being made and spent. But for further confirmation of this, scroll to the bottom of the advertising skyscraper on the right-hand side of the page to click More Sponsored Links. Clicking this link pulls up a page that highlights how many advertisers are trying to get their advertising materials on the first Google search results page for the search term that you have used. There are 253 advertisers competing for the same search term. With that number of competitors in the market, the cost per click is going to be very high, proving that there is indeed plenty of money being spent and therefore made in this market. The final thing you need to do is research the market jargon, the insider language the people in this niche use when they are communicating or talking with other insiders. To find where these people congregate and communicate, you should search for niche-appropriate forum sites because it is these sites that people use when they are looking for other net users with similar interests to theirs. To continue with the same example, I would search Google for acai berry forum or forums because by default, Google will list the most popular forum sites at the top of the results page. In this example, there appears to be no specific acai berry forums, but there is plenty of information available in associated forums, such as on the weightloss.fitness.com forum site and the others shown here. In other markets or niches, you will, however, find lots of forum sites, so start by researching the ones that are most popular and work down. Remember that what you are attempting to do here is to infiltrate the insider language that people in this niche use when they are communicating with each other. Consequently, this is not something you can do overnight, as you need to find an active forum or two where you can lurk while building up your knowledge of insider vocabulary and language use. Once you have observed what is happening and what is being said for a while, you should have a reasonable degree of understanding and knowledge about what happens and the jargon being used. After you have reached this stage of reasonable knowledge, it is time to test what you think you have learned by getting involved in the forum yourself. In other words, you should start your own threads where you attempt to use the jargon of the market in the appropriate way. When you sign up for membership of the forum, I would not necessarily recommend that you use your proper name. Although there will probably be no real problem if you do, remember that you are using this as a test and that until you have tested what you think you know, your reading of the situation may be completely wrong. If so, then other members of the forum might be more than willing to out you as an unwelcome alien, or even worse, some kind of scam artist, which is a tag that you definitely do not need attaching to your name. So, using a pen name as a way of protecting yourself against false accusations is generally a good idea. When you start posting threads of your own, try to do so in a way that is challenging, interesting, controversial, or shocking, as this is the best way of eliciting responses from other members. It is these responses that will really indicate just how far you have come, because if you use the appropriate jargon in your original thread, but don't go over the top, and receive replies in a similar vein, you immediately know that you're on the right lines. If not, you may need to do a little bit more research before trying again, with a different pen name. But once you learn the language that works in your niche, you have the secret key to your perfect prospect's purse, something that very few other copywriters will ever have. How much research and what to do with it? In the early days when you are first trying to find new clients for your business, you are not going to be snowed under with too much work. Consequently, when you're just starting out, it will pay you to go over the top in your research efforts, doing far more work than is justified by the fee you are going to be paid, as adopting this approach will ultimately benefit your business. In the first instance, the more research data you compile, the more professional and effective the copy that you produce is going to be. A high-quality professional sales page into which you have put a great deal of research is far more likely to sell a large number of products than a sales page that has just been thrown together with a minimum amount of background work. The more sales your copy generates, the quicker you are going to establish your reputation as someone who can write copy that sells, which, of course, makes it far easier to attract new clients and additional work. Another benefit of putting in this extra research in the early days is that you are still perfecting your craft and your ability to research properly. As this research ability will be an asset in the future, this represents another benefit that will ultimately put more money in your pocket. What I would also recommend is that when you are perfecting your research tactics, you write everything down, adding appropriate screenshots and the like, so that you have a detailed how-to research guide of exactly the way you do things on your computer. As a supplement or alternative to this written guide, you could create screenshot videos to demonstrate exactly what you do when you are researching. You can do this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as a natural part of your research activities, it is likely that every so often you will discover a new trick or workaround that helps save time or improves the quality of your research results. If you include this in your plan, it ensures that you never forget these tricks, which can be important if they are things that you are likely to use only very occasionally. Secondly, and far more importantly, this how-to manual is something that you can give to someone else so that they can replicate exactly what you do to research your market. This is going to be invaluable once you start getting busy, because when that happens, you are no longer going to have the time available to personally undertake the depth of research you need to do. You are therefore going to have to find other people to do the research for you. Your guide enables them to do research in exactly the way you want it done from day one, meaning that you can be absolutely confident that the research results will be exactly what you need. As an example, if you do get to the stage where you are asked to create a new sales page for a different product every week, then you are probably going to need 4 assistants to do the research for you. Although finding research assistants is easy through sites like Elance or Get a Freelancer, getting them to do the job exactly the way you want is going to be a nightmare if you do not have a manual that goes into every tiny detail of the job required. You would waste several weeks writing it from scratch when you get to the stage where you need to outsource, or you can create the guide as you go along so that it is ready the instant it is needed. How to write highly effective copy. Different kinds of sales pages. When you have done your research and are ready to start writing, the first thing that you need to consider is the kind of sales page that you are going to write. There are 3 common types of sales pages used in online marketing. The first, and probably most widely recognized sales page format, is the long copy sales page. A sales page where there are several thousand words, so that the prospect who is reading the page has to continually scroll down in order to continue reading. Next, there is the short copy page, which is perhaps, not surprisingly, a short version of the previous example. And finally, there is the increasingly popular video sales pages, where there are minimal words on the page as the video does the selling. Now, if you are creating copy on behalf of a client, they will have told you exactly what kind of copy they want, almost certainly including such information as the minimum number of words required, whether bullet points and images are required, and if so, where they are to be placed, and so on. If, however, this is your own sales page, you will have to make the decision, with the most widely accepted rule of thumb being that the more expensive your product is, the more information there needs to be on the sales page to convince the prospects to buy. For the purposes of this manual, however, I am going to assume that you are creating a more traditional long copy sales page, because if you can do this, then creating the short copy page is just a simpler version of what you have already learned to do. Using ClickBank to find effective copy. Earlier in this manual, I suggested that when it comes to writing effective advertising copy, there is no sense in redoing all of the work that others have already done. Consequently, the first thing that you should do is study other successful sales pages to allow you to analyze what makes them successful before replicating those success secrets in your own copy. Let's start with the best-known resource by turning to ClickBank to see what you can learn about successful sales pages. When you open any ClickBank results page, either by typing in a specific search term or by category, What you are presented with is the top 10 digital information products called up by that term or category search. It is often suggested that these 10 products are the most popular, but while there is an inkling of truth in this, what this search really demonstrates is far more interesting from a copywriting point of view, as I will explain. This is the top of the money and employment search page on which the top 10 products are shown. Under each individual product, there is a line of statistical information, which is data that ClickBank affiliates use in their research into whether an individual product is worth promoting or not. To the far right on every highlighted line, there is a figure for grav. This is a short version of gravity, which is often said to be a measure of the popularity of the product concerned. Any number above 100 points indicates that a product is very popular, so all of the products in the previous screenshot would appear to fall into this category. But here's the thing to bear in mind. Until a prospect finally decides to get their credit card out to buy an individual product, they have absolutely no idea whether it is worth spending money on or not. The product itself is not therefore popular with that individual prospect at the point when they buy. In effect, therefore, ClickBank statistics do not indicate product popularity because when the customer pays, they do not know whether they like it or not. What a high-gravity figure is therefore demonstrating in reality is that the sales page for the product is extremely effective because it is really telling you that the product is selling well because the sales page copy is extremely effective. From a copywriting point of view, this means that ClickBank is presenting you with a detailed list of the sales pages that are generating the most sales. Hence, it follows that they are the pages with the most powerful and effective advertising copy. Okay, as you are looking for ideas for a long copy sales page, the next step is to check out the sales pages for products in the top 10 to find those that use the long copy format that have a grav figure in excess of 100 points. This is a very popular product at the moment that matches both of these criteria. Open the sales page up and start to read. Read through every section of the page, and as you do so, jot down your reactions and thoughts to these various different sections as you go along. If you do not do this, as one thought naturally follows another as you read, you will forget how you reacted on a section-by-section basis, meaning that you lose important information. Also, write down the phrases and terms that make the biggest impression on you as you go along, because if some phrases really ring a bell with you, it is likely they will do the same for other prospects viewing this sale page. All this information will eventually help you to start compiling swipe files, individual files where you collect together terms, phrases, or ideas from sales pages that work for you. You can then reuse these in the future in your own advertising materials. Start from the very top of the page with the banner or headline. Decide whether it works for you or not, and then try to analyze why you have arrived at your decision. In addition to the words on the page, consider the various page elements included, such as the video at the top beneath the main banner headline. CPA Insider swears under oath his zero-friction marketing methods are not illegal. In the next 7 minutes, I will show you exactly what I showed Sam. Undeniable proof these methods are real, legal, and copy-paste easy. Scroll down the page and look at the other features on the page. There is, for example, a bullet point list which highlights many of the major benefits of the product, something that every top copywriter will tell you should be included on a long copy sales page. In Zero Friction Marketing, I'm going to show you the one niche that will always be profitable, no matter how hard the economy tanks, and how to always stay one step ahead of the next hot trend. The 4 things a landing page must have to guarantee high conversions and return profits of 100% or more. The secret to matching the highest paying CPA offers to the most targeted traffic sites to create a surefire money-in-the-bank ad campaign that literally pays you on autopilot. Why you should never run full-page banner ads. The covert method to bypassing the middleman between you and the sale. This trick alone will increase your profits by thousands every month. There are lots of testimonials. Social proof is absolutely essential on a sales page if it is to be effective. And many of these testimonials are given face-to-face on video, which is becoming an increasingly popular and powerful strategy. There is an unconditional 60-day money-back guarantee, which is absolutely essential nowadays if you are to have any chance of selling, together with several links and buttons on the page, where anyone who has already made their decision to buy can do so without continuing to the bottom. So, the makeup of the page is highly professional and follows a format that you could definitely follow yourself when you create your own sales pages. But there has to be more to it than that, right? Do you know why it works? When you're looking at a number of long copy sales pages, you will find some work for you and some don't. On a sales page that works, there may be some particular aspects or feature on that page that immediately spring out at you as making it effective, but sometimes what makes it work is far harder to discern. There may be words and phrases on the page which you add to your swipe file for use in your own copywriting efforts in the future, and if so, this is a perfectly acceptable and permissible tactic that is used by even the best-known copywriters in the business. But what happens where a sales page works and you can't figure out why? Frustratingly, there will be times when you study a sales page that flicks the switch for you, but you won't be able to understand exactly why, no matter how long you study it, to get to the core of why it works. Perhaps even more frustratingly, this is most likely to happen in the early days when you're just trying to launch your copywriting career, which is, of course, the time when you need the most help. Well, there is something you can do to get around this difficulty, a technique that I learned from one of the top copywriters in the business, John Carlton. But he freely admitted that he learned it from someone else, so it is not copyrighted knowledge. What John did in the early days to hone his copy analysis skills is something that I, and I guess hundreds of others, have done subsequently, and from experience I can tell you that it works like a charm. What you do is, write it down. That's it, you write it down, no more or less than that. Or, more accurately, you copy the sales page that you are trying to analyze word for word with an old-fashioned paper and pen. You do not do so on a computer keyboard because when you use the keyboard, your fingers are disconnected from your brain and it becomes far too easy to copy in a comma if you use a computer. If, however, you write every single word from the sales page absolutely verbatim on a sheet of paper, then you will think about what you're writing. When you first try this out, it is unlikely that your epiphany will hit you at the first time of asking. So you might need to do it 2, 3, or even 10 times before you really understand what it is that makes that particular piece of advertising copy so effective. In other words, there could be some hard work involved here, but it is hard work that is more than justified in the long run. This strategy is just about the best way I know of developing your analytical skills to a point where you can skim through a sales page and pick up all the most important points in the space of a minute or two. Unfortunately, however, you cannot reach this running stage until you have gone through the phase where you have to put in the time and effort to learn to walk. But of course, this analytical strategy does not only work with ClickBank sales pages. It doesn't matter what kind of advertising copy you are trying to find the key for. If the copy works for you, you must write it down on paper, word after word, until you understand exactly why it works so well. For instance, go back to old-time ads on Ad Classics to discover what makes them so effective, what makes them tick. That if you read a couple of the ads earlier, you probably had no idea why they were so successful back in the day. So now is the time to find out. Analyze them by writing them down while thinking about what the ad creator is trying to do with every word that they use. As you do so, you will gradually learn how to recognize the strategy behind the advertising, the power words and phrases that drive strategy, and so on. Once you can do this, you are in a position to deconstruct any advertising or promotional copy before leeching every effective element of that copy for your own swipe files. Consequently, you will quickly build up a swipe file, or several, because you should have a headline swipe file, a bullet point swipe file, and so on. These files will quickly become invaluable resources from which you can create effective ad copy within a few hours after you have collected the relevant information through your initial research activities. Indeed, until you are in a position where you can confidently say that you really understand without any doubt exactly why one page works, whereas another doesn't, you should be prepared to don your analytical hat to do the work that will reveal the secret to you. Now, I am not going to attempt to kid you that this does not take work. But here's the thing to understand, the factor that justifies putting the work in, and especially in the early days. The top-level 5-figure copywriters did not get where they are today in a position to command huge fees for one sales copy page by winging it and being lazy. They put the necessary work in and did whatever it took to succeed. John Carlton is just one example, but you will meet many more in a moment that learn their trade in exactly the same hard way. However, as a consequence, they are now reaping the rewards of the efforts they made. In comparison, there are hundreds or perhaps even thousands of would-be copywriters who never got past square one because they were not willing to do the work. They wanted everything spoon-fed to them, but unfortunately in the copywriting world, this is not how it works. What you ultimately get out of copywriting is in direct proportion to what you are willing to put in, and there is never a better time to put the work in than at the very beginning, because this approach naturally sets you up for maximum long-term success. The sooner you can do a great job, the sooner the money starts pouring in. Success means 5 or maybe even 6-figure paydays, whereas anyone who wings it is going to be looking for something else to try in 3 months' time when they decide that copywriting is not all that it is cracked up to be. Every time you see ad copy that works, you must be able to say exactly why it is effective. You must be able to say exactly why it is effective as a second-nature reflex reaction. Once you reach that level of competence, you are truly set up to be a top-class professional copywriter, if you have not reached that exalted position already. Other top copywriters to follow and mimic. In marketing, whether it is in business on the net or in the real bricks-and-mortar commercial world, there is an oft-repeated and widely accepted adage that suggests that if you're going to learn from or copy anybody, you should always pick a top expert as the person who you are guided by or copy from. I have already mentioned John Carlton, and there are several more similarly stellar copywriting authority figures listed below, whose sites I would very definitely recommend you should add to your bookmarks folder. All of these guys are, or were, because unfortunately Gary Halbert is no longer with us, top-rated copywriters, many of whom acquired vast experience of marketing and advertising in the real world well before the advent of the net as an advertising medium. And here's the thing about every one of these sites. Every copywriter listed here got to the top of the tree because they are an expert in creating incredibly effective advertising copy, a lot of which can be accessed through their sites and blogs. Consequently, with your newly acquired analytical skills, you can steal super effective advertising ideas and copy from some of the top people in the business for your ever-expanding swipe files. The more copy, ideas, and information you have in your files, the easier it becomes to create top-quality, super effective advertising copy at the drop of a hat, as you eventually reach a point where writing sales copy becomes similar to putting together a jigsaw or completing a join-the-dots puzzle. Finding customers. Once you have acquired the knowledge that you need by applying what you have learned so far, and have accumulated swipe files that are brimming with information, ideas, and copy that you can use, you're ready to launch your business. To do this, you obviously need to find clients or customers, which is the next step. Fortunately, however, this is a relatively straightforward step, as there are lots of places where you can offer your services, and you can do so relatively cheaply, or at no cost as well. In order to be able to sell your services, the first thing you need to do is establish credibility by proving that you can do what you claim. To do this, what I would do is join the #1 online marketing forum, which is the Warrior Forum. I would then post what is known as the Warrior Special Offer, WSO. This is an offer that is exclusive to other members of the forum and costs around $20 to post. As this is the most popular online marketing site, there are always hundreds of members looking for a quality offer at a bargain price through the WSO section of the site. There were 538 members viewing this particular section of the site at the time of this screenshot, and here is the time it was captured. Offer to create 5 short copy sales pages for the first 5 Warrior members who send you a request by private forum mail in return for a testimonial. A video testimonial would be even better. Also, as part of the offer, you should tell members who take up the offer that while the sales copy that you create for them will not be available to anyone else, you will be using it in your portfolio for promotional purposes. You can also ask them for any results that your copy generates, as a successful track record of sales will certainly help acquire new clients in the future. If all goes well, and it almost invariably does when you use the Warrior Forum, you will have 5 great testimonials and a portfolio that you can use to show prospective clients that you know what you're doing in the future. It also means that the next time you create a WSO, you can charge 50% or 75% of what you have established should be your standard charge to start bringing some money in while still offering a great deal to forum members. Search out the top people in the industry and offer your services to them for free for a limited period of time in return for a testimonial and the opportunity of working with them on a longer-term basis. If they agree to your proposal, you have the chance to impress them with your skills so that once the limited work-for-free offer expires, they will hopefully continue to employ your services and pay you for them in the future. Once you have a few testimonials under your belt, a portfolio of work that you can use to show that you know what you're doing, including results, and perhaps even a few clients, you can approach online advertising agencies to offer your services as a freelancer. Similarly, you can offer your services to established copywriting businesses as well, as many of them are looking for up-and-coming freelance copywriters who can provide evidence that they know what they're doing. You can even advertise your services directly through sites like Craigslist and US free ads. My own experience of advertising using these sites is that while you won't get many inquiries, and some of the ones you do get will be a waste of time, the clients that you pick up using these 2 resources tend to be folks who stick with you just as long as you keep doing the job properly, so it is worth doing. How to charge your customers. As someone who has just become a copywriter, one mistake that you're quite likely to make is that of underestimating the value of what you can provide to an online marketing business that needs an effective sales page. While it is pretty obvious that in the early days you are not going to be able to quote premium prices to your clients, it is also important to appreciate that as you develop your copywriting skills, your prices must always reflect the value that you bring to your client's business. For instance, to return to the example I used earlier in this report, if you write a sales page that generates $1 million in one day, with several more millions added subsequently, I would suggest that your services are worth more than $25,000. Of course, when you are creating a sales page, you have no way of knowing exactly how much sales revenue it is going to generate for your client, which is why you need to be a little creative when it comes to how you charge for your time and services. In the early days, what I would recommend is that you work for clients on a back-end fee basis. As you are relatively unknown, you do not ask them for money up front, but instead you have an agreement in place where they pay you a sum that is mutually agreed in advance on successful completion of the job. For example, you agree that the fee is $1,000 at the beginning, but they don't pay that until you deliver to their satisfaction. However, you do not work on this basis indefinitely, simply because although this is a reasonably effective foot-in-the-door tactic, it is not one that you can survive on in the long run. Consequently, what you should agree on with your client is that if after this first commission they want to continue working with you, you will do so on a staged payment basis. As an example, you might agree with your client that 33% is paid in advance. Another 33% tranche is to be paid at a pre-agreed point in the sales page creation process, with the final 34% paid on satisfactory delivery of the required copy. Okay, returning once again to the case of our $1 million sales page copywriting friend. If you get to the stage where you are working with big dog marketers who have the ability to create products that generate millions of dollars, agreeing to a flat rate fee up front is really not a great idea. It would be far better to reduce the initial fee and include a percentage for every sale made rather than going for a large lump sum up front with nothing to come subsequently, simply because in this way you are getting paid for doing the job properly. Think of it this way. Even if the sales page is for a digital information product that is going to be sold through ClickBank, with 75% of the commission going to affiliates, every penny the marketer behind the product receives after they have covered the cost of creating it is pure profit. Consequently, asking them for a 5% split of total sales revenue will still leave them with a very handsome profit, and because you have agreed to a lower upfront fee, their initial setup costs have been reduced in any case. Of course, this strategy is only going to work once you have acquired a reputation in the market for generating sales and a track record to prove that you can do so. As, however, a top-name marketer is unlikely to work with you if you have not already reached this level, this should not be a major problem. The final option is one that only really becomes appropriate if or when you become a famous copywriter yourself, someone who has reached the happy position where you can say no to any project that you really don't fancy because you already have enough top-quality clients to provide you with more high-paying work than you can reasonably handle. Now, instead of asking for a percentage cut of sales revenues, you are only willing to work with new clients in return for an equity share in the business for which you are providing the advertising copy. If, for example, someone approaches you with a new project or product which, through research, you can see is something with great potential, you lay down the rules because your position entitles you to do so. If the marketer who brings this idea to you is planning it as a spin-off from their existing business, you should insist that they establish a completely separate legal entity, for example, an LLC, to handle it. You can then agree to create the sales copy for the new product at no cost in return for a 50% stake in the company, so that your reward for creating the sales page, which will only take a couple of hours because of your swipe file collection, remember, is a half share of a business that could make millions of dollars. As you can see from this quick run through the various charging options available to you as a professional copywriter, it is a question of starting small and humble, developing your skills as you go along, while always remembering to charge appropriately as your business and reputation quickly develops. Conclusion. As I hope you can see by now, although becoming someone who can create superbly effective advertising copy at the drop of a hat and get paid extremely well for doing so might have seemed like a crazy pipe dream when you first started reading, there is in reality absolutely no reason why this should be the case. On the contrary, if you apply what you have learned from reading this manual and put in the work that is undoubtedly necessary to develop your copywriting skills, then there really is no limit on how much money you can earn as a copywriter. Moreover, Because, as I suggested in the beginning, the number of copywriters who can genuinely do a great job quickly is pretty limited. You are not operating in a market where there are thousands upon thousands of competitors. Instead, you are working in a market where it is consistent quality and your ability to deliver on time that counts above all else. Consequently, once you have put in the time and effort to learn the copywriting craft and have gone through the apprentice period when you develop your skills working with your first clients, it is consistent quality and an unswerving dedication to meet deadlines on every occasion which must be your primary focus. It is these two factors that will initially establish and subsequently build your reputation, and with a blossoming reputation as one of the top up-and-coming copywriters in the business, it is natural that your bank balance will also enjoy a degree of blossoming at the same time. So, now you know that there is great money to be made as a copywriter, and you have all the essential information you need to get started. All that is now needed is action, which is why you are the most important person in this project from this point on.